Hello there. Welcome to Tech and Cash. I hope you are doing well. So today we are going to do a little tutorial on how to pick a good starting hands. So to do this, I have my special guest again, Flan from Winging It. So how are you doing today, Flan?
Hello, I'm doing good. So yeah, thanks for having me on again. And yeah, I think this would be a useful exercise just to talk through our thoughts on the opening hand. We say time and time again that that first decision, picking your starting hand, it's often the most important decision you make all game, because it really dictates how you get off to a good start in a game. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna have two starting hands to look at, one going first and one going second. So and then we're gonna go through maybe different scenario and talk about different strategies and what card we'll pick for the early game. All right, here we go. All right, let's look at our first starting hand here. Wow, look at this.
Oh, easy decision.
Easy. And this remind me of so much of one of the recent video that you just posted on
Mm,
Forest Engine using a
yeah.
wood duck and catbird.
Yeah, wood duck and catbird is I mean, wood duck is strong on its own.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times when I've had the wood duck and you really struggle to get those cards early on. You just draw things that don't really fit with what you're trying to do. But if you add the catbird to that, suddenly you're looking at four cards a turn. They're not all going to be great, so some of them are going to get discarded, but it just allows you to get through the deck quicker. And you can find those cards that really work well with the wood duck so much sooner, and it gets you off to such a strong start.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I'm gonna put the link to Flan's video in the description, so please check it out if you're interested. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of like looking at this hand, I mean, there's no question that Wood Duck is, the top
Yeah.
of the tier card here to go with. It's just such a strong card that you can play early on and get card from the forest. Um, and I know in your video you have the wood duck, the catbird, and the bush tit, which is nice
Mm,
because the bush tit allowed you to get eggs.
yeah.
Um, so in this case, would you still keep the catbird to pair with the wood duck?
It's a tricky one. I probably would lean towards keeping it just because there's nothing else really obvious that goes well with it. I mean, the thing that you often miss, I think, if you do go wood duck and you go and try and build a strong forest engine, you can often miss out on getting eggs, and so obviously eventually you will have to lay eggs.
Yeah,
And if you're only getting 2 points of that, it feels a bit weak. The cuckoo there is a potential option, but if you're going to keep the cuckoo, you need a bowl nest,
yeah.
and that means you keep the catbird as well. And suddenly you've only got two food
And that's nine
and
food that you need
nine
to
food
play.
cost. Exactly. So you know, uh, especially if you have just the wood duck down at the start, that's a lot of turns gaining
Yeah.
food. So I would probably go for the wood duck and the catbird
Mm-hmm.
and just see what I can get from the deck. So
Yeah.
you can keep the three food. There's seeds in the feeder, so you can easily get that second seed, and get the wood duck down. And then yeah, I'd probably start drawing food for the catbird. There's a couple of cherries in the feeder, which is nice,
Mm-hmm.
so that's going to help get that down. But yeah, I'd plan to get the catbird down, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like I say, draw the food for it. But just see what comes up. You might get something better. You might get something that's going to get you eggs as
Yeah.
well, or something like a nuthatch that is a nice point source. So yeah, I think that's what I would lean towards.
Yeah. Let's look at the tray. Maybe, there's something good that pair wells. But in this case, I guess nothing really pair well with the wood duck. The ruddy
No.
duck typically is a tier A bird for wetland, but since you have the wood duck, you don't really need the ruddy duck, which
Yeah.
allow you to draw two and discard one. Um, I mean, the siskin also doesn't really pair well with the wood duck
No.
because with the wood duck you draw two cards but you have to discard one, so at the end you only gain one card, so you're not going to have extra card to tuck with the Siskin here.
No, and the other thing is, even if you do get that tuck, it's just going to give you extra food. And the thing with a wood duck forest engine, you're never going to be short of food. You're going to be drawing food basically every turn. So you don't really need to be going for that extra seed. What you need is the egg source. So nothing really in the tray. So I think that's where you just have to start digging through the deck and see what you can find, really.
Yeah, I think we both agree that wood duck is a must keep here. I'm not such a huge fan of the catbird here, just because it's kind of 3 food, and it's not generating any points. But I'm not against keeping it, because the thing is, once you lay the wood duck down and you draw food, you draw better birds for your forest. You can always turn the catbird into food. So I'm not against it, just as a backup plan, but it wouldn't be my top choice.
No, I think that's a good point. I think I can think of a number of times where I've been sort of on the fence about a card in my starting hand. And if I am sort of 50-50 on whether I keep it or not, I normally lean towards keeping it, because most of the time you're giving yourself that option of, well, once I've got something in the forest, I can always discard it for food anyway. So you don't feel like you're losing out, but at least you're keeping the option. You could go wood duck and 4 food, and just get it down earlier. You pay 2 for 1 on one of those food, but you could in theory get it down on that first turn, rather than have to go to the bird feeder once before getting it down. So it gives you that extra turn of digging cards, which could very well pay off if you get something good earlier.
Yeah. I know we also kind of briefly mentioned about the cuckoo. I mean, looking at the first end of round goal here, we have birds with the platform. What do you think? Do you think that's enough to maybe keep the cuckoo and the wood duck?
Possibly. It's one of those where if it allows you to win that first end of round and suddenly it's getting you 4 extra points, that can be huge. But that first end of round is probably one where it's the one to ignore out of all of them, because it's only 1 point that you lose that you could have got for coming second, whereas the others, obviously you lose more points for those. I think the problem just with the cuckoo is that you don't have that bowl nest, so unless you are going to keep something else with a bowl nest, or just gamble on what you can get from the deck and hope you can get something that is going to have the right nest type for that cuckoo. I think you're gambling either way there.
I think another interesting question is, you also talk about the possibility of picking just the wood duck and 4 food and then just play it immediately. I mean, usually I would go and pick up the grain and play the wood duck in second turn. I don't know, how did you value that 1 food difference here?
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't value that extra food that highly. I think if you're going to be drawing lots of food with that wood duck, so I think by the time you've drawn a card worth playing, it might take you 2 or 3 turns, you've probably drawn the food to play it by then anyway. I don't think food is at such a premium if you are going for a forest engine, that I would be willing to force it down, pay that 2 for 1. I think just unlocking that ability to get the cards sooner, it's, again, even if it's cards that aren't great, you can then discard those for more food, so you're kind of getting that food back anyway, just by having the wood duck down that turn earlier.
All right. So those are the couple options. Either you pick the wood duck by itself, or pairing the wood duck with the catbird can potentially be an option, or pairing with the cuckoo. And looking at the bonus card here, we have the Parry Manager and the Food Web Expert. I'm kind of leaning towards the Food Web Expert here because of the Wobbler. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Food Web Expert is a strong bonus card. We talked about this before on the bonus card tier list video. You can easily score double-digit points with this bonus card, so it's really strong. And you're right, the warbler is in the tray, so that's sort of almost an instant pickup. But do you want to be picking that up straight away, or do you want to be digging through the deck and trying to find the cards that need to build the engine? I actually quite like the Prairie Manager in this case. I think it's one of those where if you're going for a Grasslands engine, you're kind of limiting the number of spaces you have available to max this out. But if you're going forest, I can think of so many times where I have managed to max this out using double birds, or those birds that let you lay lots of eggs, or that give you bonus cards in your grasslands. I just think getting those 4 birds, that's 2 points per bird, which is the same as the Food Web Expert.
Right.
So it's a difficult one. I would probably lean towards the Prairie Manager though in this
Yeah.
situation.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it comes down to personal style and taste. Yeah, I definitely more leaning towards the Food Web Expert for guarantee. I mean, more guaranteed 2 points. But you never know. Your opponent might pick up the Wobbler too, but unlikely
Exactly.
in early
Yeah.
game. But yeah. All right. Maybe we can move on to look at the second hand here.
Well, it's going to be a tough act to follow, that one.
Yep. All right, look at this. By first glance, not great because there's a lot of grassland bird. That's not what you want to see. But you have the spotted sandpiper, which is a top B tier bird for the wetland. So that's really going to help you to draw cards using wetland. And the obvious trouble here is there's no forest bird. So, and again, if you look back at the tray, what we have is the siskin, not the best forest bird that you can hope for, but in a desperate situation, maybe like a really desperate situation.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Sandpiper is probably the obvious keep there. Um, 5 points for 1 food is so strong, but just giving you that ability to dig through the deck so much quicker. I mean, we talked about this with the Wood Duck in the first hand, but I think if you can get that down and just start drawing cards, and really try to get something for the forest, then I think that puts you in a good position. I don't mind the Siskin. I think with the Sandpiper, you probably will have some excess cards just from lots of drawing. So you potentially could make it work, but I certainly would be, going for the deck first and seeing if I could get Nuthatch or something like that to go in the forest instead, because those are just generally stronger birds, I find. So
Yeah.
I think Sandpiper's the obvious keep, but it's difficult to know with the quail and maybe the swift as well. I might look at those, but then you're limiting your food options,
Yeah.
and getting down that forest bird that you eventually draw. You're just making it so much harder for yourself to do that.
Yeah. I'm kind of tempted to pick up the scale quill here just because it's such a good grassland bird for early game for 1 food. I think I would be more motivated to keep the quill if it kind of helped with any of the bonus card, but it really doesn't here. So
Yeah, and the end of round goals as well. I mean, there's a couple there that are to do with eggs, but obviously, the nest type doesn't really match. And yeah, like you say, it doesn't help the bonus cards. But yeah, I think you can make a case for the quail. Certainly, if you're going to be playing the Sandpiper, you'll probably look to lay eggs before you draw those cards, just so you can start discarding eggs to get more cards. So certainly, if you can play the quail before that, you get a free egg from that. So it's already starting to, make up for that 0 point value. So yeah, I think that's reasonable. And then yeah, start digging through the deck with the Sandpiper and just hope you can get something for that forest.
yeah. And another interesting thing here is we talk about how the Rudy duck is the tier A bird in the tray. And since, usually if I were going second, I would kind of assume that the Rudy duck would be gone. Yeah, so I guess that's another thing to keep in mind. Like I wouldn't count on me getting the Rudy duck if I'm going second in this case because it's such a good bird.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point actually. If you are in this position, do you anticipate that maybe the Rudy duck is still going to be there, And if it is still there, do you take it and still play it? Because it works really nicely with that first end of round goal. And like you said, it is still one of those tier A wetland birds. So it can be worth taking and playing, even if it's alongside the spotted sandpiper. Suddenly you're getting 4 cards a turn, which is huge and is going to unlock more options for getting that forest bird down. So is that something you'd look to do maybe if it is still there?
Yeah, I mean to answer your question, I definitely do not expect the Rudy duck to stay
Yeah.
for me to pick up, because especially if I just look at this, oh, my opponent only kept 1 bird, so
Yeah.
I probably thinking like, oh, they have a bad starting hand, so they probably need the Rudy duck. But if it's still there, yeah, absolutely, I'll pick it up and couple that with my sandpiper to build a really strong wetland engine. So
Yeah, I mean, and that's another good point you make there. I think there are cases where you can read some information into what your opponent has chosen to do. So, if you see them keep 1 card and 4 food, you kind of know, okay, most of the birds they drew probably weren't that good. But equally at the other end, you might see situations where they keep just a single food and 4 cards. So if that is the case, you probably can count on them not taking something from the tray, unless it is one of the S tier or really high A tier birds. But you can still, I think, get a bit of information just based on the food and cards that your opponent has chosen, like you said.
yeah, I mean that's definitely one of the first thing that I look for when I'm playing. And all right, last thing, let's look at the bonus card here. So we have the historian and viticulturalist. I think based on our tier list, I believe historian is ranked higher than the viticulturalist.
Yeah, I think like we said, when looking at these bonus cards, don't get a whole lot of experience with the historian just because it isn't available in the online play.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is a stronger bonus card just because again it's more flexible. So even if you only get 1, you still get 2 points.
Yeah.
And you can really max it out by getting a lot of those cards that fit it. But yeah, viticulturist is still a strong one. I
Yeah.
think just because you don't have any birds in the hand that fit either of them.
Right.
If you had maybe 1 that met
Mm-hmm.
viticulturalist, I'd probably lean towards that. But yeah, I think given this, I would probably go historian as well here.
Yeah, I'll probably go with the historian in this case as well for the reason that you just talked about. All right, there you go. That's the choices. Shall we look at another set of starting hands?
I think so.
All right. All right, here we go. Let's look at a second set of starting hands here. So this is going first. Well, you definitely do not want to see migratory bird like the grosbeak and the sparrow, but
No.
on the other hand, the rose-breasted grosbeak is a really strong forest bird, so that's potentially, I think, almost a must keep. Looking at this hand here, the warbler and the catbirds are probably too expensive for early game. So when I see hand like this, the first thing I would check is definitely the tray. And while we have a nuthatch here, which is a tier A forest bird, and the Stellar Jays and the mergansers are not that great for early games. So potentially the nuthatch. So I see a problem here. We have 2 great forest bird, but we don't have anything for the wetland. So what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think you're right. I think the grosbeak is kind of the obvious keep. Yeah, if you see 1 migratory bird in your starting hand, it's already annoying. So when there's 2,
Yeah.
it's even more annoying. But I don't mind the warbler here actually. I
Right?
think it's 8 points. If you've got the grosbeak down, you can get the food for that in probably 2, maybe 3 turns. Particularly if you are going to pick up that nuthatch in the tray and add that to the grosbeak, suddenly you're getting 3 food from your
Mm-hmm.
visit to the bird feeder. So yeah, I mean it's one of those birds, the warbler, where you don't keep it if you've got something better, but there's no other real wetland options. I mean, you could maybe go for the sparrow on the
Mm-hmm.
on the migratory bird. I generally don't like playing with them, so it's not something I lean towards. In this case, I probably would lean towards the warbler and just go, well, it's one more food, but I'm going to get 6 more points from it, and essentially it's going to function the same in that wetland as just something that's there to at least unlock that option of getting more cards.
Yeah, I think you make a really good points there that one additional food is gonna score you 6 more points. So yeah, I am kind of leaning. I think on first look, I think the sparrow can works too. You can get the sparrow out um, relatively quick with a strong forest. But yeah, if you have a strong forest where you are getting additional food, I think the wobbler could definitely be worth it as well. So yeah, so basically, I think I kind of agree that the best play here maybe keep the grosbeak and the wobbler, and then probably I would say pick up the nuthatch turn one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm definitely taking that nuthatch. I think it works so well as just that second forest bird because
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you're going to unlock that extra food. You're getting 3 food, as well as the cash food. And if you're going first, it's always dangerous to leave one of these tier A birds, even if you already have something that works in that habitat.
Yeah.
I think it's so dangerous to leave that for your opponent because you don't know what's in their starting hand. Maybe they have some really strong wetland birds and nothing for the forest. So if you leave them that nuthatch, that's just going to give them so many more options. So absolutely, I'm taking that nuthatch all day long and stopping my opponent from having it.
Yeah, absolutely. So bonus card time. So we have the bird counter and wildlife gardener. So for the wildlife gardener, we have the grosbeak. So that's one. Is that enough um, to for you to pick the gardener here, or would you still go for the bird counter?
I think I'd probably still go bird counter. I think
Yeah.
maybe if I had 2 bowl nests, that
Mm-hmm.
might sway me because I feel like okay, I'm halfway there. I'm already going to play these birds, so I only need to play 2 more birds to get 4 points,
Right.
which is what you'd have to do for the bird counter as well. And obviously, there's way more cards with the bowl nests than have the tucking power.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, like when we discussed this bonus card before, I think generally you're looking for those tucking birds anyway
Mm-hmm.
because they are so strong. So if I get one, I'm playing it anyway. The bird counter is just a nice extra 2 points if I am able to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll probably pick the bird counter as well.
Yep.
All right, let's look at our second starting hand here. Ooh, just by first look, I
Okay.
feel like this is way nicer. Um,
Yeah.
First
Yeah.
look,
More options. Yeah.
yep, Tohi definitely one of my top
100%.
five, almost top three. I want to say, aside from all the OP bird, in the game, I definitely love Tohi. The fact that you can get food from the grassland just for yourself is so good. And then for the wetland, I'm thinking probably the blackbird is your option here. You have a tuck and lay, which is pretty good brown power.
Yep. Yeah. I think those two are kind of the obvious keeps. I mean, I'm also a big fan of the tower. I can't really think of any games really where I've seen it in my hand and not kept it.
Yeah,
It's almost always one of the stronger options. And it's just a single food, so I think even if you do have a really nice starting hand where you want to keep maybe 4 birds and just that single food, well, you can get the towhee down for that one food, and it's going to start generating food. And like you said, it's food just for you.
yeah,
So unlike the Phoebe or the hummingbirds that are
hummingbird.
going to
Yeah,
help your opponent get off to a really strong start, the towhee you can be a bit more selfish there, and
yeah.
obviously works nicely with that first underground goal.
Oh, absolutely. And this could potentially be my blind spot here, but whenever I start with Tohi, I almost give up the idea of developing any sort of forest for food. I don't know, it's just at the back of my mind. Like I feel like Tohi is almost enough in many game, especially if you draw like another food producing bird in the grassland.
Yeah, I think that's the key. You do need that second bird in the grassland because you can't survive just off that single seed per turn throughout the whole game. But yeah, if you can add a crow or a hummingbird or something like that to get that second food, that's absolutely a strong position to be in. But I think actually that you can still pivot at some point to building something up in the forest, because quite a lot of the strong forest birds that you'll see, they do take the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
The nuthatch in the tray being a prime example of that. So even if you just spend a couple of turns laying eggs, that's going to get you the food, and you've already got eggs as well to play all those birds. So you can very quickly get a decent enough forest going, just fed from the towhee, really.
Yeah, good point as well. With that being said, I would say like I almost never play towhee in the forest. Like it always
No.
goes to the grassland for me.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think it's one of those where, yeah, it can go in the forest, but its real value is in the grassland. Just that ability to get food in a different habitat. You want it in the grassland anyway for this end of round. It's really going to help out with that. And yeah, just being able to avoid trips to the bird feeder and instead spending them laying eggs and getting points. Yeah, that's just a much stronger position to have at the start of the game.
Yeah, and again, looking at the tray, like you say before, if I'm going second here, I probably would not expect to be able to pick up the nuthatch. I would assume my opponent will probably pick it up right away.
Mm.
So that's definitely gonna be gone. And yeah, this is pretty much the pick. I think it's pretty obvious that the rest of the birds are just either too expensive or just not really efficient for early game.
Yeah, I think the Bob White is one that you might look at and you think, oh, it's going to be great for that first end of round goal, but there's absolutely no chance that you get the food for that and get it down in time. And yeah, I feel like as well, if you do get the towhee down and the blackbird, your food source is going to be from laying eggs, so you're already going to fill up on egg spots pretty quickly. You don't really need more eggs from something like the Bob White. What you need is more food, or
Yeah.
a tucking bird or something like that to help build up your engine.
Yeah, I agree. All right, bonus card time. Another interesting matchup here. So we have the wetland scientist and the rodentologist. So if you play the blackbird, you already have one for the wetland scientist, but rodentologist is definitely in the tier A. So
yeah, I think I would still go rodentologist here. I think just we've said it before, getting those 5 wetland birds is really difficult. And even if you only get those 3, okay, you've played the blackbird, you've then played 2 more birds to get 3 points. Well, if you found 2 rodent birds, that'd be 4 points instead. So I feel like it's more flexible, the rodentologist. Even if you only get the 2 points from it, well, you might have got 0 from the wetland scientist, so you're still doing better there. But yeah, it has such a high potential for point scoring with the rodentologist.
I totally agree there. Well, there you have it. A little tutorial on how to pick a good starting hands. I hope you find this helpful. And I'll put the link to Flan channel as well in the description, so please do check it out. Thanks again for doing this with me, Flan.
No worries. Thanks for having me. I found that a useful exercise for myself, certainly. So yeah, hopefully, particularly some of the newer players who've picked up this game recently, hopefully this was something that you found useful, and I think we'll probably look to do more of this as well in the future.
All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.
See you next time.
All right,
I'm not saying anything here because you'll put it in.
But you already say something.
Yeah, you'll put this in anyway.
All right, that was not
a lot.
bad.